Hi, this is Laura Holyoke, and I will have three total recorded PowerPoints for you covering our trifocal human resource frame. And I'm going to start with the personal frame right now. So first of all, why Holyoke do you call it tri? If you think about lenses and looking through trifocals, there's three different ways to look at them in organization development. The first is a personal level, the human beings, what is similar, what is different about them in organizations. And then the second one are families and groups. And the third one are medical, clinical, organismic views of looking at the organization as if it were a person. But the nice thing is what this lens does is it lifts the need to blame. The backdrop or theories that the HR trifocal lens works through is motivation, human development, personality, and the employment contract. These are most of the things that Bowman and Deal talk about. A lot of it is the fit between the individual and the organization. It centers on organizations and the people what they do for one another. So it's very basic element of the personal part of the trifocal lens is personnel characteristics and their effects on organizations. When we work with people, there are all sorts of things that affect each and every one of our lives: our age, gender, sexual orientation, racial, ethnic background, occupation, career stage, employment status. I have a better way of looking at these, though. So these are all the things to consider when we work with other people, and how their lives may be impacted, or their personalities, or when we're dealing with something about them, it could be related to the innermost things. Is a lot of times what we just see, but we don't think of the things in the blue category: geographic location, marital status, parental status, work experience that they've had, and then even the organizational dimensions that come through their status as management, they're affiliated with the union or not. So you can see that at any given time, every individual that we work with is going through something different and is bringing in a uniqueness about them. So a new concept that I want to introduce that Bowman and Deal did not talk about is the I call it the margin equation, but this was put forth by Richard Swenson, and it's the idea that all humans are alike in one way, and this way is that we all have resources that we can pull from and a load that we carry, and based on our load and resources, we can either end up in positive or negative margin. So let me say a little bit more about this. Our resources end up being skills that we have, time that we have, emotional stamina, could be physical strength, financial solvency, social supports that we have, people in our lives that help us, our education. It could be our geographic area. I just read the word load. Anyhow, all these things plus more contribute to our resources. And then we each have a load that we carry. And load can be divided into two different kinds of factors. Internal factors, these are the expectations, hypothetically, that we put on ourselves. They could be even emotional disabilities. These are usually invisible, although these sorts of loads often preoccupy our mind. And sometimes we are the only ones that know about this load. And then there's external factors. External factors could be work, relationship issues, responsibilities that we have. It could be debt, could be health problems that we're having, could be people that we're having to take care of. The basic point behind this equation is that you want to end up in positive margin. But what happens in most people's lives is our load becomes greater than our resources, and we end up in negative margin. And we all end up in negative margin from time to time. However, if we stay in negative margin for a longer period of time, one of two things has to happen. Either A, we will have a fundamental breakdown, or B, we will decide to fundamentally change something in our lives. But we cannot live in negative margin for any length of time. It's good. I think this is a great equation to teach people in our lives. When they ask for something, we can say, you know what, right now I don't have the margin to do that, but ask me next week. It's a much better way, I think an easier way to say no when others request something of you, or if to say yes, to even look at your own resources and load at any given time. You know, how are you feeling? Are you operating in positive or negative margin? And sometimes that doesn't include, sometimes we can look at this equation and decide to either decrease our load, take something off our plates is what we usually call this, or increase our resources. Some people, what provides them more resources is time spent outdoors. It kind of refreshes us and gives us the ability to carry a heavier load. So margin is what we want, and margin is slack resources. It's the theory that something should be left over at the end of our day, when we've done everything that we're supposed to do. It's what you need. And negative margin is when we have nothing left for anyone or anything, including ourselves. Another concept that I want to introduce that Bowman and Deal do not, and I think this is very appropriate for organizations, is the Johari window. And the Johari window was put together by Joseph Luft and Harry Ingram. Technically, it should be called the Johari window, but we'll ride with the Johari window. So it's a technique that helps people better understand their relationship, both with themselves and with other people's. It's called a window because there's 4 different panes, if you will, or 4 different areas to look through. And so the first area that people most often talk about is the open arena. And this arena is what we know about ourselves and also what we let others know about us. It's public. We make it public. We're okay with making it public. This is our known self. And then the second area is known as our blind spot. And our blind spot are what we may know about ourselves, but we probably don't believe that others see it. And it's usually what others see right away about us. It may be that we're over talkative. It may be that we pick at our ears when we're talking to people or look down when we're talking to others. So that's the blind spot. And then the third area is either called the hidden area, or the facade. And the facade is what we know about ourselves and we choose not to tell others. So we present something that's maybe a little bit different about ourselves, or we present not everything that we know. And then the last area is the unknown area, or an unknown self. So this is maybe what we haven't discovered about ourselves. This may be somebody who's been adopted when they were young and are still maybe 10, 12 years old, and that adoption has been kept from them, so they may not know it yet. And it could be some sort of trauma that we are repressing. So it could also be just an undiscovered self, talents that we haven't yet known that we truly have. Here's another way of looking at the Johari window. And in relationships, if you look at that open and free area, we can increase that which strengthens our relationships, and that's through self-disclosure or exposure to make smaller that hidden area. It's feedback, asking others for, soliciting feedback from others, which decreases our blind area. And then it's shared discovery. And part of that is others' observations of us and us being open to learning and to life. So we want to make the open area larger than all the other areas because that represents health. And if you think about this window in terms of groups of people work together like this. So there's openness and freeness about individuals in that group. And the larger that is, the more people can have strength in working with one another. There's no blind areas and there's not hidden agendas. And they've worked to share openly what's going on. Finally, we're going to talk about French and Raven's bases of power, both in this lens as well as the political lens, because bases of power usually goes with politicalness. Anyhow, French and Raven, I believe in 1957 or 59, came up with a theory of different ways that people assert power over others. They've added to that since then, but their first 5 are reward power, and this is the ability to provide positive reinforcement for desired behavior. I have reward power in terms of being a teacher and assigning grades. Coercive power is the potential to inflict punishment, and coercive power can be used in any situation. It doesn't have to be punishment of a physical kind, but it can happen pretty easily in a social situation. A look that's given from one person to another. It can also happen in damaging interactions between 2 people. Referent power is respect and esteem that you hold for an individual because of their personal attributes, because people just like you. Means that you often have referent power. Then expert power is the form of recognized expertise by others. Legitimate power is based on authority. These are usually thought about as bosses. My department chair has legitimate power over me because of her position. It's noted about French and Raven's bases of power that we give others this power. And we don't have to take a class where a teacher can grade us. We don't have to be around coercive power, although coercive power tends to be the one that may have kind of holdbacks. We choose to like others. We choose to recognize others for their expertise. And then in a job, giving somebody power over us in terms of a position, we don't always have to work for that person. We can choose a different job. Thank you. This is the end of our personal part of the HR trifocal lens.